Hi and welcome. In this episode, I am going to be talking quite a bit about audio and podcasting. Now, this is a visual communication and storytelling company, but I have recently become 100% into podcasting because I believe that's a medium of the future, especially now that we're in a world where we're working from home and we're staring at screens for 8+ hours a day. I think audio is a good mechanism to communicate and tell stories and also kind of make sense of the world. Now, this is about my journey in figuring out how to improve my own podcasting. I'm going to be launching a podcast very soon and starting to build out the equipment. Recording today, I'm using the Shure SM58. It is a dynamic microphone I have on a boom arm, and it's routed into my recorder over here. And I have what's called a cloud lifter, which kind of boosts the amplification. These are all technical terms. This is all complicated stuff, and audio is a completely new medium for me. I'm going to be communicating via audio in a podcast forum, and for someone that's a visual communicator, not having that visual is a hard point for me. But I'm going to be working on using my voice and using the ability to articulate with just audio and helping the audience create that visual. Now let's do a little sense making. How do we make sense of where podcasts fit within our communications in this world? Everyone is incredibly busy. Everyone's overwhelmed. The world is getting very complicated. There's just a lot of stuff going on. We're quarantined, not quarantined. Is there a vaccine? Is there no vaccine? There's so much uncertainty. And if you're working right now, work is quickly becoming a smaller part of your world. People are trying to survive. They're trying to keep their kids fed, alive, educated. They're trying to figure out what to do. And so our job as communicators is to make sense of everything. And a podcast is a great mechanism to take multiple sources of information, bring it together into an NPR style, This American Lifestyle publication. It's going to be hard. It's a complete new medium. If you're used to sending out newsletters, sending out communications in written form, like I'm about to send for my company, people aren't going to read it. They're going to skim through it, gloss it over, and ignore it. We listen to podcasts because it brings in a different cognitive load for our brain. We're looking at screens all day long. We're looking at Zoom meetings all day long. And we're spending 8 hours of just way too much attention focused on something. A podcast is a mechanism to disconnect, but bring in different audio components. And so as I'm exploring podcasting, I'm looking at it as a way to bring in sounds, different voices, better narration, telling stories by narrating, and then making sense of everything. That requires an incredible amount of work on the part of the narrator or the content creator, which means you need to storyboard something out, collect your information, whether it's in the form of an interview, gathering that information, and then producing the podcast and distributing it, sending it out. I'm going to be focusing this series on several parts of that component, on the storyboarding side of it, production, and distribution. But the storyboarding side of it is probably the most important. I think a lot of podcasts I've seen today will start with just an interview. Here's a raw interview. I'm going to sit down and the host will ask some questions and someone answers. And it's a long 30 minutes, sometimes an hour discussion, but it's unprocessed. And to our audience, no one wants to sit there and listen to it. Maybe it's an interesting topic and that's fine. But if you're working on communicating to your audience, you want to be able to curate the information, carve out what's important, and then narrate and tell that story. And it's different than written form because in written form, you're typing, you're editing. Editing in audio form is a little bit harder. You have one chance to record it, and if you make a mistake, you got to re-record it again. And there are mechanisms to edit out ums and ahs and clip out certain parts, but for the most part, it takes quite a bit of planning up front, and then just one performance to do the production, and then editing and producing is quite a bit of work. There are ways to outsource some of that, but I'm working on learning to produce it myself. About a year and a half ago, I did an internal corporate podcast, and the hypothesis was, would it be interesting to create an NPR style podcast? And how do you produce something like that? I went through that entire journey because it started initially with just interviewing a subject matter expert. And oh boy, it was just a very, very boring interview. Experts aren't good at narrating, telling stories, and they like to just talk technically about their topic, which is great. And so I worked with a partner, and she and I worked together on it, and we gathered that interview, clipped out just the sound bites, scripted out a narration, and we worked together to record that narration remotely. I sent her an ATR 2100 microphone. It's a USB microphone that I do recommend for a lot of people. It's fairly inexpensive, easy to set up without requiring a lot of equipment. And so we sent it out, we recorded the narration, and then I edited the whole thing in Logic Pro 10. There's a lot of different tools out there, like Audacity, Adobe Audition. I use Logic Pro 10 because I'm on Mac. But the editing process, I mean, that's, for me, I learned a lot, because when you looked at the final production or the final file, it was clipped and there were pieces everywhere. You could see lots of different components being put together. It was very, very complicated and hard. And that's before we even stitched in sound effects, music. Putting it all together is a lot of work, and I believe it's worth it. And so I'd like to start this journey down, especially with 1980, to go 100% into podcasting. I'm using a fairly inexpensive but high quality production mic, the Shure SM58. I have another broadcast mic coming soon, the Electro Voice RE20, which is a radio style mic. And I'd like to be able to get to the point where I'm narrating and creating curated, edited podcasts that help make sense of the world. And I really want to know how we can do this in the corporate environment and produce an internal podcast that people want to consume like they do any consumer products. The line's very blurry between corporate communications and consumer consumption. People are used to high quality content on Netflix. They have their favorite podcasts that they listen to, and the bar is set incredibly high on consumer expectations. And so if your employees are receiving less than subpar communications, how do you expect them to consume that information? Hey, thank you for joining me. I'm going to keep going on this journey, and I'll document this process along the way, and we'll see how it goes. I'll end with someone shared the Matthew principle. Generally, it's a, why the rich gets richer, why people just keep getting exponentially better. And so 7 months ago, I posted a studio review of this exact space that I'm working here. And it was very amateurish. The space was just all white. It was very echoey. 7 months later, I'm sitting here and I have close to a professional recording studio in this space. It never will be because it's not a professional space, but it's getting really close. And with each piece of content I produce, with each recording that I do, I learned how to improve it, how to make it better. It's going to keep getting better. So thanks for joining in this video. I appreciate you being here. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm definitely going to be documenting my journey in here and potentially producing a course or something to help you learn how to produce your own professional communication via podcasts. See you in the next one.